If by some chance, some stroke of luck, or some act of God, you have stumbled upon this broadcast, you are listening to The Chivalry Chronicles with your host, Dr. DLH.
I'm a damn doctor.
David.
We're going to bring the tea.
refuse
To not drink during the podcast.
Yeah.
And me, Jaime.
They need to make podcast equipment a lot more expensive to get some of these clowns off the air.
Gather around as we discuss a modern, manly approach to chivalry. So I hope you're ready, because I know we are. So let's get into it. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of the interview with Ray Lopez, the author of Lockup, Professional Wrestling in Our World. We'll dive right in as the guys discuss women in professional wrestling, maybe a little bit of nepotism also. Ray discusses the square circle presidents and who's in your Mount Rushmore wrestling. That's all next as we join the guys.
I mean, yeah, I think that the women's evolution in professional wrestling has been probably the most significant, monumental change from how wrestling used to be like in the 80s and the 70s to now. I think back in the day, they were like just treated as side pieces, and this is nothing new, but I thought it'd be a good thing to like go through, and a lot of it's WWE, go through like as you see these different moments and pay-per-views and things progress on, and we highlight them to kind of highlight how they were treating women as, sex objects, or they were getting really short matches and stuff like that, until seeing the modern progression to where now they're pretty much treated as equals, and nothing is handed, nothing is given to you, which I think is the right mentality to have. It's, some people want to think like, well, we need to have a women's main event and we need to have a men's main event. I mean, whatever's really popping, whatever's the fans are behind, you can, they do a great job of judging the pulse of the fans. That's what gets pushed to the forefront. But the women have done such fantastic work where they have worked their way to being at that forefront, to how we're having people care about them. And that chapter kind of just talks about the evolution, the significant moments. I think there was a very significant moments at a WrestleMania when Mickie James was fighting, I want to say Trish Stratus. Mm-hmm. And, the other matches on the card were kind of like, a Playboy Bunny match, or like kind of like these almost bra and panty type of matches.
Bra and panty, lingerie
pretty much
match.
like just, sex filler matches. And I thought that was a significant moment because, people were liking that, but then when you could hear the crowd turn on those matches, basically, I think there was a "this is bullshit" chant started. Yeah. And when Mickie James and Trish just gave it a legit, regardless of gender, a really legit great match. They put the work in, they had the characters in there. It was just good work rate. The crowd was really behind it, and they loved it. And I think that was probably one of the first moments when the wrestling world really signaled.
When about was that, Ray? Are we talking 80s, 90s? Or?
No, it was it's in the early 2000s.
Oh, okay,
sure.
that far away. Yeah. So I could have swore, and heck, it may have been a movie, but I could have swore there was like some lady that was a wrestler back in the 50s.
Yeah, so there's a new movie out. It's called Queen of the Ring.
Okay, yeah, that's probably why it comes.
Mildred Burke.
Yeah. So what's the story on her? I mean,
there was lady wrestlers back then, and they were all kind of controlled by just they had like their own promoters, and one of the biggest one was the Great Moolah. Like she was a promoter of women's wrestling, and she almost kind of like had them like that was her stable. Like they would call Moolah if you wanted a women's match, call Moolah and she'll get you 2 girls.
Right.
But that was true. That was true
wrestling back then. And they weren't showing as much. Of course, they weren't showing as much skin because it's the 40s. There was, and then after that, I'm sorry, Ray. Just to go a little further, like into the 80s, it became less about women wrestlers and more about women as valets. Like you had
Elizabeth. That's the one that comes to mind that I always remember.
Sister Sherry. But they still had a couple of matches here and there, but it wasn't like every other match is a women's match, and that's kind of where we are now. Right.
Well, I think like back in those earlier days, wrestling was just treated in general as kind of like almost a circus show. Like, and you had like side acts and oddities. You'd have like midget wrestling. Yeah. You'd have a wrestling bear. You would have like all these like a variety acts of things. And then at some point, 40s, like 50s, probably towards the 80s, it got more focused just on like wrestling,
The sport.
and that kind of like the women kind of went to the side, got pushed aside because they were kind of almost treated as like they're
The
that
sideshow.
side novelty
Yeah.
act, they're that wrestling bear, they're the wrestling midgets, they're those like something different, for fans that want that. And so a lot of MT's right. Most of the time that when we were growing up, we remember wrestling fans. We remember Miss Elizabeth standing on the stage taking off her skirt, or Sensational Sherry.
Yeah, but wasn't there in the 80s that Netflix did a show for Glow? They did come up somewhere in the late 80s.
Yeah, and like you said, those are side projects or side shows. Like
and the
It was
Glow-
like Mount
main
Fiji
guy.
and all those,
Right.
like all they started their own little, I guess, wrestling federation, whatever they did.
Yeah.
And that Netflix show, because I watched that
But
show.
they were
'cause I
a
was-
filler. Whenever it's all said and done, they were the filler, right? Or
well, I mean,
is that what?
those were specific shows about women's wrestling.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That
Okay.
was I would say sort of like a novelty promotion for the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It wasn't really what you would
Separate
consider like
promotion.
mainstream wrestling.
Yeah.
And they had it in Vegas.
So they
And,
try to pick it up a little bit. I want to say it was the late 80s. Because, and then it just died out just because it's.
Yeah, it's kind of like
It's women's wrestling.
roller derby, and kind of we're gonna have women skating around
Yeah.
the thing. Like, we'll have women's wrestling like whole show just with women. So
But
it's
it just
a
wasn't
novelty.
getting the same mainstream notoriety that it gets today. And it took a long time and a lot of effort by a lot of women and, trainers and people that had faith in the women's program to make that happen. I mean, there was like niche little organizations here and there, kind of like with the Glow thing. But Glow was like super campy. The girls really
Yeah.
weren't real wrestlers.
Yeah.
They would learn a few moves. They were just kind of like learning on the fly. And God bless them, they did a pretty good job of entertaining people for the while it lasted. But I mean, now these women they're into it. They train from when they were kids, just like the men do. They go to Mexico. They go to Japan. They study all the art forms of the different types of wrestling to become like a complete real wrestler.
Right.
Yeah. Who are your top women wrestlers like right now? Who do you think?
I mean, as much heat as she getting, I'd say there's no doubt that the Queen is
Yep,
on top.
Charlotte.
I mean, Charlotte is probably the best female wrestler in my opinion of all time.
Yep.
She's got the total package. She's got the athletics. She's got the look. She's got the pedigree that definitely doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And she can really go in the ring.
And for those of you who don't know, we're talking about Charlotte Flair,
Ric Flair's
the
daughter.
daughter
Ric
of
Flair's
Ric Flair.
real life daughter.
That's right. That's all you got to do. That's all you know.
And she's
That was
got-
terrible.
She's
That
got
was
massive
terrible.
shoes to fill.
We got to cancel this show now. This is. But isn't that always a thing? Like, it's like, so and so's son and so and so's daughter. And it's.
But there's
it's
a
kind
lot
of-
that,
yeah,
There's a lot
it's-
of that in wrestling. I mean,
Yeah, no, that's what
yeah,
in wrestling specifically. It's a big thing.
Well, there's a lot of that getting you in the door, but there's countless examples of family wrestlers. Guerrero's got some younger daughters that haven't panned out as
Yeah.
much as they can. The Rock's daughter was trying it for a while. Now she's kind of like in a backstage.
Well, The
role.
Rock himself, right?
Well, he is too,
Yeah,
but
he's
that doesn't
second
guarantee.
generation, no, third generation.
Third generation.
It's
yeah.
definitely a foot in the door, but by no means is it guaranteed that you're going to get the prominent spot. Because at the end of the day, it's just a business, and whatever the fans are reacting to, whatever they think is really going to, impress the audience, they're going to get that top billing, whether they're second generation or not.
As somebody that's looked at this, and researched it, and I mean, it's really impressive. I know I've said that before, but it is really impressive. If you look at the book, go get the book. I'm gonna give you my pitch now. I told you during our break. I said I have a pitch for you, but screw it. I'm gonna do it right now because I'm thinking about it. Trading cards, man. If you just reduce those pie charts into a trading card with the picture of the wrestler on the front, bro, I would buy that. It'd just be cool to have.
Yeah, but you just gave away his patent.
We haven't aired it yet, so I can cut this out.
Trading cards are big in professional wrestling. People love having the top trading card.
But
I know
have that. But is there anything like that?
I mean, not that I've seen out there. I'm not a huge trading card guy. I do have some of them. Sometimes people will just send them to you randomly as part of like you order something else off the internet. I mean, they might have like some statistics in there.
Yeah.
There, but
And here's why. I mean, as a kid, we did baseball cards, football cards, and then I came across when I was probably like 10, 11, is trading cards for comic books, right? We were big comic book fans.
absolutely.
And I had a whole binder, and it was a comic book card for the actual comic book character, right?
Psylocke.
Yeah. And then it also had comic book cards for the battles, like Wolverine versus the Hulk, Wolverine versus Spider-Man, and when they fought and what was the record. Yeah. And so it was, I had that forever. I don't know what happened to it. I think Lel has it somewhere in his stash of comic books. But it was a binder that was, about 2 inches thick and like laminated, not laminated, but the little card holders,
inserts.
Right.
the little inserts. And so when I saw that, when I was kind of flipping through your book, the fact that with the pie charts, it just, to me, I mean, bro, that's a business right there.
Well, we've thought about it, and it might be happening in the future. Is putting some of the content into like a website format.
Yes.
And when I created the original ones, the ones that are in the book, we started off with 10, just doing it like a typical top 10 of that. But then I had some more time when my illustrator was working on the drawings. He really he took it very seriously. I think, shout out to Eduardo Romero. I think he's a local San Antonio guy. He did some great work on the illustrations. So that took some time for it to come about for the illustrations, which I was totally fine with. And while I was using that time, I was like, well, I really like these charts. Why don't I do more than 10?
Yeah.
And then I then the next number that was naturally, as a wrestling fan, came into my mind was 30. 30-man Royal Rumble. It's significant.
Yeah.
So then I started expanding to 30. But I would love to keep expanding those further and do more wrestlers. Have one with the women's wrestlers too. I think you would have to be comparing them separately because they didn't have as many title opportunities. There weren't as many titles until like now with the golden time. Like I think they just started having really mid-level belts. For the longest time, they just had the top title.
If you couple it with the book, I'd buy 3 more. You have 3 for me. Yeah, I will buy 3 more. I already bought 3. I'll buy 3 more.
Yeah, and Ray does have a chapter where he's kind of, I think you describe it almost like a presidential election, who wins out of one versus the other, and Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan at
And that's 100 cards right
1984, and so forth. Like, what was your mindset going into that particular chapter?
We call that one the Presidents of the Squared Circle, and there's 2 chapters on it, part 1, part 2. And basically what it is we start from the 80s, and every 4 years from 1980 up until present time, there's a quote-unquote election in the world of professional wrestling. So who's the top guy? Who's the person that's going to carry us forward for the next 4 years? And now we try to ignore everything that we know and just look at the thing in a vacuum. Like, if the election takes in 1984, we kind of like try to look at everything that happened before then, but not really everything that happened after because we don't want to know what panned out afterwards. Mm-hmm. Some guy might have got injured and been done for forever, which would obviously throw a big kink into their presidency.
So you got to know who's hot coming up.
Who's like coming up, and who would be the potential? Yeah, and who would be the guy to like lead the company forward? Right now, people would say Cody Rhodes is your guy right now. He's a WWE champion. Yep. He's been it for a year. He's headlining WrestleMania with John Cena. John probably had his time when he was the guy that were leading it forward. So we think it's a fun discussion if we can have 2 wrestlers, and not just necessarily from WWE. There's some WCW guys in there. I think AEW had a candidate at one point in time.
It's a very short period of time.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're a relatively new promotion.
Was it Kenny?
It is Kenny Omega. It is Kenny Omega. Yes. I think his campaign was against Becky Lynch because Becky Lynch was on
Becky
fire.
Lynch should have taken him.
She was on fire at that point. So I think it's a fun fan discussion to have where we're just comparing these 2 wrestlers at any given point in time, and you're talking about their kind of career up until that point, what their strong points are, what the other person's strong points are, and then ultimately in my opinion, would be the wrestler that you would pick.
I got an interesting question. So I didn't get to read that chapter yet, but did it fall in an interesting spot? I'm thinking about the year that Triple H, the curtain call, right? He got punished for the curtain call. Did that happen within a year of the when the election would be? Because if it did, like we would say, oh, Triple H is going to be president this year. But really, we know, like in hindsight, that it would become Stone Cold. So, like, where was it? Where did it fall?
I don't remember on that specific example, but I will tell you that when we were writing the book, that happened quite a bit and quite more than you would think. That there was just like real life things that would derail somebody's whole campaign.
Yep.
I think Shawn Michaels at one point it was him and Brett, and we were deciding who was going to be the next guy for them too. Well, Sean got in a real life fight with a couple Marines, is pretty famously known, and that kind of derailed his campaign. John Cena sustained a really significant injury at one point, and that he was expected to be out for a year. And if you're expected to be out for a year, can you really be the president for the next 4 years? So there are real life twists and turns in there that are just like these things happen, and they might have derailed your run. Ric Flair could have been a candidate, even going further, but he had just jumped to the WWE, and that was a big unknown. We seen how WWE treated some non-homegrown talent at that time.
Oh yeah,
the Road Warriors. Very, I still like the Legion of Doom, but a lot of people said they were very watered down. Dusty Rhodes famously had those polka dots, and so was Ric Flair going to get that treatment or not? I think they treated Ric Flair all right in hindsight, but like those are the things that you didn't know.
You never know.
You didn't know as you were evaluating
what Vince is going to do. Yeah,
right. So there are real life things that affect who was going to win on any given election year.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good thoughts to have, or a good conversation to go through.
Okay. I think go back to the thought that when we started, I said, because of all the research that you've done and it's extensive, is there a wrestler that you've seen, or that in the past 20 years or whatever, that you go, this guy's going to be the next guy? Like, do you always have, man, this guy? Like, I watch football all the time, right? And you notice players. And you always have arguments, right? For me, let's say whenever DeMarcus Ware got drafted by the Cowboys, that was Sean Merriman that was drafted by the Chargers, right? And they were drafted about the same year. I mean, they were drafted the same year and about the same spot. And so because I'm a Cowboys fan, I was like, I think DeMarcus Ware is better. And over time, you were on the right side of history, right? DeMarcus Ware was better. Is there, when you're looking at new wrestlers coming up, because of your extensive research, because we all do it, right? But is there people that you were like, yes, I was right about this guy from day one. I saw him. I knew he was going to do this. He was going to be the next big guy. Like, do you have that? Do you think about that stuff? Do you?
Yeah, and there's a lot of young guys that are coming up that I think are primed to be the next big thing. I remember the first time when AEW was just starting, and I saw MJF, and I didn't know who this guy was. I had no idea who he was from the independent scene, but I saw him on the microphone. I was like, he's got something if he can wrestle. And then I saw some of his matches. Yes. And homeboy can really wrestle. He can put on some fantastic matches. Yes. And so, there's people that just seem like they got it. Like they got it. And you never know what's going to happen. You never know if they're going to be difficult to work with, if they're not going to go around, if they're going to have personal issues, or if they're just going to cool off for natural reasons. I thought when LA Knight came and became Max Dupree, I was like, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? He seemed like, I'd seen some of his earlier stuff. I was like, he seemed like he could be so much better than that.
In the NXT, he wasn't Max Dupree.
And he was so much better than that. I was like, what are they doing? What are they doing? So you can see when somebody has it. I think, in my personal opinion, I'd say Ric Flair is the perfect wrestler because he had the total package of what being a wrestler is.
So would you name him like the GOAT for professional wrestling?
So that's a good question. So like we go, everybody in wrestling, they talk about their Mount Rushmore. Yes, like who's on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? And like it's a great, like, so is Ric Flair on your Mount Rushmore, and who are your other three?
I mean, absolutely, it would be Ric Flair, and reason why he's just the GOAT, in my opinion, is because he had the total package, meaning he could really work in the ring. He could give you a fantastic 5-star match.
Work with anybody.
If that's your thing, he can give you some of the greatest matches ever. Now, I think the best person to ever work in the ring was Shawn Michaels, who's a native of San Antonio boy, but he's good on the microphone and he's entertaining. But he's just Ric Flair, just a little something more special.
He didn't have all the problems that Shawn had too.
He didn't have all the problems that Shawn had. He had a longer career.
Yeah.
When you're saying problems, you're talking about out of the ring problems.
Yeah, backstage problems, personal issues
that that Shawn had to famously overcome. And he says it all the time about his younger days. And yes, there were some issues, but he was probably the best person in the ring. Bell to bell.
Yes,
I think that. But Rick was really good, and he was close to Shawn's level. But then when you had the promos mixed in, and you had the character and all that signature stuff, I think that's what made him the GOAT. Now, who would be the Mount Rushmore? I would say, I would put Ric Flair up there for sure. I would probably put. I mean, you got to put Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yes.
You know, I know he's a controversial figure right now, but Hulk Hogan really changed the whole industry. And that, you know, he may not have been the greatest worker, but he wasn't that bad.
So what's your criteria though for your Mount Rushmore? Because I think that makes a difference.
I would say who had the most lasting legacy in the world of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
within wrestling, not outside of wrestling, right?
Or, you know, it could also, carries over the other way because, you know, when you transition to outside, you bring in
Right.
mainstream attention
that's
and
what
you
you
make it
want.
bigger.
So but that's why I
somebody.
wanted to make that distinction. Like, are you saying just made an impact to where they brought more fans from it? You know, so like The Rock just, I think, brought more fans back to wrestling, and instead of the other way around, right? It got him out of wrestling, but then it brought him back.
And The Rock's a close one, and he's deserving to be on anybody's Mount Rushmore. I would not.
But not yours.
But you would put Stone Cold over.
You know,
over
The
him.
Rock is my personal favorite. He is my favorite wrestler of all time. He is the most entertaining guy that you see. When
Yeah.
you have a segment with The Rock, whether he's just sitting there talking or he's having a match, you will be entertained. There's no doubt about it. The problem with putting The Rock on the Mount Rushmore, in my opinion, is he has such a relatively, and it's in the graphs chapter, he had such a relatively short in-ring career because he got called to Hollywood. And, hey, nobody in the world could blame him. I think any of us would have done the same thing.
So longevity is in wrestling is a big deal to you personally.
I mean, I'd say it plays a factor.
Yeah.
It would definitely play
And
a
so
factor.
right now you have Ric Flair, Stone Cold,
Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, and what's your fourth?
You know,
Is it fluid? Is it a fluid
You know,
Mount Rushmore?
Some could say it would be John Cena. Some would say you could put Shawn.
No, what does Ray say though?
I would have to give that final spot to
Shawn Michaels.
Undertaker.
Oh shit! Out of nowhere.
Just because of his lasting career,
yes.
his impact on the business.
Impact on the business, yes.
He had some of the greatest entrances ever. The Tombstone Pile Driver was probably the most perfect finishing mover for his character, for his person.
Yeah, it just everything was.
You know, I would say
His branding was really good.
I'm giving it to Undertaker. Now it's a tough one. That's all a tough one.
No, it's a pretty good fucking.
You could take out some of these guys and put in Rock, I love Bret Hart. He was fantastic. Shawn was fantastic. John Cena obviously did huge business.
I would probably take Hogan out just because I'm not a big fan.
Sure,
but
he's got a lot of steam.
but
on him
Ric
right
Flair, Stone Cold, Undertaker, that's pretty solid.
And that's a big thing about it too. It depends on your era, like
Yes,
when
right.
you were watching.
Yeah, see-
Brian, like it's all subjective. Like that's why it's such a good conversation to have.
I don't have a four, but the two big names that come out that stand out is a Hulk Hogan and a Ric Flair. Like when I think wrestling, those are like the two images that pop in my head. The others, there's others that will pop in my head, but those are the first two.
Yeah. And if you ask somebody over 50, they're probably going to throw Bruno Sammartino in there if they're over 50, and rightfully so. I just think that anybody who's probably under 50 didn't really get to experience a lot of what he had his time over there. And, there's not a lot of tape or watchable tape to watch for, you can watch grainy old matches, but
Right.
But that's
who's
the thing
going to
about
do
it
that
is
in this era,
No.
When you
Right.
talk about Flair, like he had matches in that era
did.
too.
Yeah.
But then you also have all of the stuff that he did in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. Like it's ridiculous how long the longevity of Ric Flair.
It's crazy.
And
And
how far he went.
I also think post their career matters, and which would you have to give big props to Triple H for what he's doing, but post career matters as well. And Ric Flair has just been relevant forever. He's never fallen off of the limelight. You might ask some youngster who Bruno Sammartino was, and they would not know. But people are going to know Ric Flair is and the impact on the culture, how the football players take his say-ins, and I mean that would be mine.
Now, how about you, MT? What's your Mount Rushmore?
Man.
Because
I
you're a
think
wrestling
it's
fanatic.
pretty close to Ray's. I mean, it's Ric Flair. It's definitely Stone Cold. Like Stone Cold is the biggest thing in wrestling ever. Like from Victoria, Texas. My mom is from Victoria, Texas, bro. Like, come on.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was from Victoria.
Yeah, well, that's what he always
was
claimed.
billed as,
Yeah, he was billed as. He said he liked.
So he's not really from there then?
He went to high school there for a little bit.
I think he might have been raised in some other part
He
of
was
Texas.
raised in some other part. Yeah, it's a
But-
smaller town.
But
So Rick, Stone Cold, oh man, and even though like I am one of those people that chants John Cena sucks. because it's so much fun. But you got to give it to John Cena. Like, he is the biggest thing in wrestling, like, for our generation. Like, and now that fool is everywhere. He's in every damn commercial. He's in, like, TV shows. He's in, in Marvel stuff. I mean, he's just huge.
I think me and you were at a match once, and John Cena was doing like a Make-A-Wish thing with the kid, and you were still booing the hell out of him. And I was like, come on, man. He's helping out the kids, bro.
I'm not going to say what I said at that match. I was like 10 to 15 beers in, and he was with the Make-A-Wish kid, and I hope that Make-A-Wish kid is okay now. Yeah, probably. So Rick, John, Stone Cold. Oh, man. I think I got to go Undertaker. Like Ray said, just for longevity and like everything that he like did in the ring for the business. But then like also if you hear about the Undertaker backstage, like that was the guy that you go to if something goes wrong in the back of the ring.
What was the Mick Foley guy?
Oh, Mick Foley's awesome too.
But what was his other character?
Mankind, Dude Love.
Jack.
Yeah, I remember he had like
Cactus
multiple
Jack.
ones.
And
Yeah,
if
he
you
had
ever,
3 characters.
Yeah, he had a bunch of guys from Parts Unknown, was it?
and if you ever read wrestling autobiographies, I think Mick Foley's wrestling autobiography is by far the best one there is.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think because it's very well written, and he wrote it himself. And the guy took like the most insane bumps ever. So you would probably like think he's probably
So-
not a very smart guy. But
and
you read
as-
his book, and he's very intelligent.
As big as he is, like, I mean, you would think that he would have broken down at some point. Like he's not like a that dude's not in like.
Tip top shape.
Well, he's in wrestling
He
shape.
doesn't got
right?
the physique.
He's in,
He doesn't got the
Yeah, he
physique.
does not have the physique for it. But
he's never had a traditional wrestling body.
Yeah.
He'll be the first one to admit that.
right. But you
But
just
he can
think,
go.
yeah,
And that's the thing, like with wrestling, like they say, a lot of the thing is can you go? Can you last 10 to 15 to 20 to 30, 45 minutes in the ring running around with all these guys? And
Right.
as big as he is, shit, he's bigger than me, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, he's big, definitely bigger than you.
I know Chris Jericho would always famously say, like, if you go into wrestling, you got to give the people something they haven't seen before. And Mick Foley definitely did that. He gave
Well,
them,
you have to have. I
he
mean,
gave them things that, like,
yeah.
what is this? Where did this come from? Like, we never seen stuff that Mick Foley would do. He was a madman.
Yeah.
And the paradox of him being like such a good author. If you're gonna read any wrestling books, his autobiography would be the one I would say like start.
If you're gonna read any wrestling,
Other than mine.
Lockup by Ray Lopez. If you're gonna read 2 wrestling books, then
That's-
you can
yeah.
read that one.
Speaking of things you've never seen before, adding that element to it. When did the cage match come into play? Do either of you know
that was
when the
before
cage
our
match
time,
came into
probably.
That was like, probably in this.
the first.
in the 70s or 60s?
Maybe even earlier than
Maybe
that.
earlier than that?
Yeah, they've been
I would
around
say
for a
earlier.
while.
And then who thought, let's bring in a freaking ladder?
Well, that was originally.
I think that was-
that was Bret Hart's idea, and Bret Hart had a few of them. And
well, didn't they hang the belt? Was
Yeah, it
hanging
was
out.
almost like a capture the flag
No,
type
well,
of
yeah.
event.
well, Bret and Shawn had a match. Like it was just at a house show in which Bret won. And it was like the first ladder match in the WWE. And it was kind of Bret's idea, something that his dad was a promoter in Canada, Stu Hart, legendary figure. And then Shawn and Razor famously had that WrestleMania match, which in the book we have what we call the Wrestling Match Hall of Fame. And now I find it's crazy that there's the immortal moment for the WWE Hall of Fame. Well, before there was the immortal moment in Lockup, we had the Wrestling Match Hall of Fame. And what we did there is we took a class of I believe 8 matches because and we mirrored the 8 number. Again, there was significance there. The first WWE Hall of Fame was just one person, Andre the Giant. It was like, well, we have to do more than one match. And the second WWE Class Hall of Fame was 7 people. So it was like 8's a good number. So we put in 8 matches in there, and Shawn's legendary ladder match with Razor Ramon at WrestleMania was there. That was really the one that catapulted the ladder match to what we know is it today. Yeah. And now Brentwood might stew is like he stole my idea, but when Shawn did it, like you got to give him and Razor Ramon a lot of credit. Like nobody had really done they'd done it before, but not at that level, and it was still like super relatively new. And
the creativity that they used, like all the ladder and everything that they did with it, was just it's just unseen before.
Absolutely. That's why I had to include the match in the Hall of Fame, in which we give you the match statistics about that, who the referee is, what the crowd was, the promotion, all that stuff is laid out for you before we get into it. And then we have what a section that has the build, which is basically the story kind of leading up to the match. And then we break down the actual match. And then we talk about a little bit about the match's legacy afterwards. So,
and I haven't gotten to this chapter yet, but so what was your match Hall of Fame? Like which match was in your Hall of Fame?
we included Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, the famous one that's now being inducted. I will take credit that I inducted it first.
Did you induct it first?
I did. Well,
my God.
The book was published before they made that announcement. So maybe they were thinking about that in the back. I'm not saying they stole my idea, but
I'm saying they stole your idea. I think Hunter owes you some money. So those of you who don't know, like the WWE, every year at WrestleMania, they have a Hall of Fame. And they stick wrestlers in the Hall of Fame. And also, this last year, like they got bought by TKO, which owns UFC. UFC has a Hall of Fame. And not only do they stick like wrestlers in there, but they also stick matches. Genius. So now WWE is like, all right, we're going to stick a match in our Hall of Fame. And the one that they're doing is Bret Hart and Stone Cold, which is a classic.
Classic.
I thought it was the best there is, the best there was.
That's right.
It
will be, baby.
Fantastic match. But to answer your question, let me give you the rundown of the matches we included. And this is in chronological order of when they first appeared or when they first took place. So the first one was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Macho Man Randy Savage. The famous match at WrestleMania 3. Many people say one of the greatest matches of all time. I think it was pretty inarguable until Shawn's ladder match that was the best WrestleMania match of all time. We had to include Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, that same match on that card.
That's the one that I remember.
It's so iconic.
He lifted him over his head, which he really didn't.
So iconic.
He did not.
Right.
I think Andre just pushed his belly out.
I think there was one moment when Hogan was going to try to like back body Andre, and you were just like, the laws of physics. That's just, I mean, he's like a 460 pound. Like, that's just impossible to do. Like, no, I don't care how strong you are. Like, no human is doing that.
You're on a lot of roids, Hope.
Yeah.
You're not on
roids. Not that many.
And then we had the Nature Boy Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat for the NWA World Championship. Yeah. They had a trio of great matches, but the one we selected was the Clash Champions 6 back in 1989 in the New Orleans Superdome. Yeah. Classic match, really good work from both of those guys. Great ring work. And I also thought that the match was very fitting. It's kind of like, this was towards the end of the NWA run because they were about transitioning into WCW. So it was kind of like one of their swan songs. Like, here's one of their last great matches that we're going to give is our world to the contribution of wrestling. So that one made it in. Of course, the match that I just talked about, the ladder match with Shawn Michaels and the bad guy, Razor Ramon, that one got in. Then we had the Stone Cold Bret Hart match that is now WWE has agreed with and inducted. I had to have a match representing the luchador culture. You know, I love luchadors being a Hispanic myself, so we put in Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Eddie Guerrero for the Cruiserweight Championship. Oh, yeah. Back in Halloween Havoc, you remember the purple Spider-Man suit that Rey won. I mean, that match was, it wasn't too long. Yeah, 13:51 was the match time, but it was, I mean, those were like fast, hard-hitting moments. They filled that time. They were flying around that ring. It was a fantastic match.
We call that chingazos.
Yeah, it was a fantastic match. And it really showed a lot of the American audience of just how dope luchador matches could be.
Right.
That's what I really loved about WCW. They had like a lot of luchas.
They highlighted a lot of lucha culture and introduced it to a whole new audience. And I think the WWE roster now has like 17 like Latinos or like they're
I saw that. I saw that post the other day. Yeah, they have like 17 active Latino wrestlers.
And Ray Phoenix is just blessed on the scene. He's doing some great stuff. So I think a lot of that legacy is from WCW introducing luchadors on that.
Yes.
And out of all that, I would say, I mean, personal favorite, that was my personal favorite match between luchadors, Ray and Eddie at Halloween Havoc.
Even like people like Billy Kidman, like the lightweights or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of other people adopted the luchador style. And a lot of, main white wrestlers or other wrestlers will go to Mexico and be there for a couple of years, really studying the craft, which is also why you give respect for the women because they're doing that now too.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to other countries and just living there for a while to study the craft.
I think that Netflix show, I think Eddie Guerrero was one of the kind of, they brought him in as to kind of to teach those actors how to wrestle. I want to say it was,
Well,
say it was him.
Eddie's been gone for a long time.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Eddie. It was Chavo. You're thinking of Chavo,
Chavo Guerrero.
who's also part of the Guerrero family.
Yeah. So they brought him in as a consultant or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he taught him how to wrestle. And
Right.
I think he still does like movie stuff like that part time. And that was good old Chavo. And then I put in Mick Cactus Jack Foley versus Triple H at the Royal Rumble in 2000. It was a hardcore match. Really, I wanted a match also that kind of represented that hardcore legacy, that hardcore ring of professional wrestling. This was a tax. It was also with Triple H, who's legendary wrestler, legendary figure. So I thought that match was deserving to be in our first class of the Hall of Fame.
Like he picked that one over the Mankind or the Mankind Rock match, because that one was always for me, that was the most hardcore, not hardcore, but it was just painful.
Are you
to
talking about
watch.
when he took 20 chair shots? To the
Yes,
head?
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why the match didn't make it, because
It was so
the replay
vile.
value may not be there because it makes you cringe. It's like a human being should not be taking that kind of chair shots.
And he was not only taking chair shots, but he was taking chair shots with his hands tied behind his back,
unprotected.
so there is no blocking anything. Nope. And The Rock was not showing any kind of
and Foley,
remorse or anything.
And Foley told The Rock to lay it in there according to lore, to hit it stiff. And here his reputation preceded. He's like, Nick can probably take it, and he's wanting me to do this, and it got a little out of hand.
Yeah,
it got a little out of hand.
And Mick's family is there at ringside, and it's hard. And if you've ever seen the wrestling documentary,
right?
What is it?
Well, they just had a Dark Side of the Ring one about this particular match. Oh, no, that one was about the Hell in the Cell.
No, that was
match.
about Hell in the Cell.
But they've had other ones with that, and his children were basically traumatized. From watching what the dad did, because his would take it to a whole new level.
Beyond the Mat, that's what it is. Beyond the Mat.
Okay.
Has the clip of that show and of that match.
And then my last match was San Antonio's own Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, WrestleMania 25, 2009, in the Reliance Stadium, Houston. I think that was the first of their two iconic matches. I mean, that's probably one of the best matches of all time. I mean, you had The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. You had the juxtaposition of all white versus all dark.
I was going to say, that was the good and evil match,
The pretty boy versus the monster. It just had everything. Yeah. It just had everything. And so those are the matches that we inducted in the Hall of Fame. And we talked about them. We talked about their legacy. We talked about the actual match. It's fun. I think wrestling fans will get a big kick out of it.
Yeah, I mean, Ray. At the end of the day, you did put together a well crafted book, even for someone that's not into wrestling. The layout of you embark on a kind of a fun, entertaining journey. So even if you're not into it, you could read a couple pages and get something from it. Yeah. Kudos to you, brother.
Thank you.
Kudos to you.
I think the ultimate goal of the book was I just wanted to make something that was fun, not super serious. Not there are plenty of those books out there. I've read plenty of them myself. They're good books, but I wanted to do something really different. And when I came up with this book, I wanted it to be something different that wrestling fans had never seen before. I wanted to have visuals. I wanted to have the charts, the graphs, the illustrations. I wanted to have a fun way to be discussing wrestling fans. I mean, there's one chapter called The Tournament of Jericho. Again, kind of Jericho being the guy that kind of all started this whole process for me, where we break down which version of Chris Jericho is the best. So we have a fake tournament, and we're putting 1996, for example, against 1992, or whatever the case may be. Two different, and we compare the two of them, kind of give a rundown to the stats and say which one was the best version of himself in a fictional tournament where he's fighting himself. There's a lot of stuff like that for fans that I think we'll just get into. A lot of the hardcore stuff. So it's part history, it's part fan discussion. I think it's just a lot of fun for wrestling fans to
Absolutely.
sink their teeth in.
Yeah, and I think it's something for everybody, like David was saying. For somebody like myself that grew up in the 80s and watched a lot of 80s matches and then somewhere in the 90s, there's something in this book for me. There's something in the book for MT, who kind of came on strong somewhere in the 2000s. Right. I mean, and so it's a really good kind of and it's even bits and pieces all over the place. Like the things that you did with it, with the matches, I think that's genius. Like it kind of gives it like a sports feel. You know what I'm saying? Because you always talk about that in sports, in football. Oh, with today's, the Eagles that won the Super Bowl last year, could they even meet up with the 1970s Steelers?
Right.
And it's like,
it's a fun discussion to have.
yeah, it's always a fun. And the answer is any team now would whoop the 70s teams. Just weight alone. You know what I'm saying? Like the linemen were like 200 pounds. But it's a great discussion. And the fact that you kind of massage that into wrestling is pure genius to me. I mean, I love that. I love the pie charts. I love the match Hall of Fame. I mean, it's a good book. I
appreciate that. I think another one of the goals was I wanted a book for everybody, whether you're, somebody who just watched wrestling back in the day. And, a lot of feedback I've gotten for people that have bought it, be like, yeah, me and my cousin used to watch it, or, I used to watch it with my brother back in the day. I really haven't fallen into it much, but then I picked up the book and like, it just brought me back to all those days and I kind of liked it. And some people like, I want to start watching again. Yeah. And then you have like hardcore people. Like I know MT knows his fair share of wrestling knowledge, but I think there's still things in the book that even like because all those stats were we just made them up because they're all based on reality. Yeah. We looked through each individual matches. I mean, it took a ton of work, but that's something that you would not get unless you like did all that legwork. But
still subjective. Yeah.
But hey, we did it all for you, and we did all the work, we did all the math, and you're just there for all those charts for you to enjoy. So I wanted to have something where a hardcore wrestling fan would still find something new and exciting and fun about it, but kind of just a casual fan that used to like watch every now and again back in the day could also enjoy it. And there is a lot of stuff about wrestling out there, which is kind of also why we decided like we need to do a fun, creative format to make it something different.
Yeah. So maybe Jaime to kind of start rounding things out here. We need to probably board approve something and.
Yeah,
I kind of have an idea of
well, then pitch it.
Yeah,
so I want to hear it.
I make the motion that you pick up Ray Lopez's book, Lockup, found on Amazon or your local bookstore, a fine bookstore. So if it's a bad bookstore, get out and go get it from Amazon. But otherwise, you know where to get it in San Antonio. If you don't, you can certainly hit us up and we'll get you connected directly with Ray.
Yeah, I mean,
one of those retailers.
Yeah, no, we'll provide a link in our Instagram page.
Yeah,
for the Amazon.
Yeah, you can go to mascotbooks.com. That's the name of the publisher. They're a publishing house out of the East Coast. You can order directly from there. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Nobles. So there are many ways you can get it. If anybody's listening to me, they can always get a hold of me. These guys on the show will know how to get a hold of me, or you can follow me on Twitter at Lucha Lockup. Slide into the DMs. If you want a signed copy, we can make that happen for you.
Yeah, so I'll defer my verdict to our resident wrestling. What do you call it?
Fanatic.
Fanatic. Yeah, enthusiast. There you go. So I'll go ahead and defer to him and to come up with a verdict.
Oh,
go ahead,
the
MT.
proxy vote. The proxy vote. What do you think?
Was that?
He's giving you his proxy vote.
Yeah, no,
board approved.
So come up with a statement that's board approved.
So I'd like to declare Ray Lopez not only like a great writer, but also a great lawyer. And what I'm saying is he's the gloat. The gloat. You wrestling fans know what the gloat is, but he's the gloat. He's the greatest lucha lawyer of all time. The gloat.
Okay, I take it back. I take my vote back.
I think I had a motion on the floor, sir.
So motion.
Yeah, so
Second?
once again, I make the motion that you go and pick up Ray Lopez's book, Lockup, found at any major retailer such as Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or the outlets that Ray described, or hit us up.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm good with it.
Amendment.
Oh, the amendment?
That was my amendment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was MT's amendment.
His amendment, I guess.
Yeah.
I immediately regretted that decision, but but there you go.
Yeah.
Board approved. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on your social media, and or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram and X. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.